So let's look at our little recipe, and what we're going to do is we're going to blend it, and we're going to drink it, hopefully, and we're going to make ourselves, it's called Graeme's Liver Love Smoothie. So we're going to begin with 2 large sprigs of parsley. Now, of course, you've heard me talk about parsley previously. I'm going to put more than 2. I'm going to put this much in there, slightly more than 2. So we've put that into our blender. Parsley, the story, of course, one of the most powerful kidney-supporting herbs, but also a source of glutathione, and hence we're using it in this blend. But at the same time, we're going to be supporting kidney health, one of the most powerful tools to boost kidney health. A medium-sized beetroot, which we'll cut up now. There it is. Okay, so I'll just take the bit of the rough stuff off and throw it over the edge. And we'll cut up our beetroot and put the beetroot into the mix. Wonderful food, of course. This is anthocyanins, this wonderful purple pigment. And we're even going to go one step further with this model. We're going to put in, that's our beetroot, we're going to put in some beetroot leaves. And who would have thought that the beetroot leaves have almost as much nutrition as the beetroot? Apart from folic acid, they actually have just as much. You can see that purple colour, and we're going to put some of that in there. Then we're going to put out 3 kale leaves. This is the kale that was produced during my little garden segment. If you recall, we showed you how with Kale on his broad fork, how quickly you can put a garden in, and this is the wonderful kale that came from that. I'll cut that up a little bit. We've got quite a lot into this. This is quite a big, I might have overdone it, but we'll see. So we've got our beetroot, our kale, we've got our avocado coming up. Thank you. And we'll scoop out the avocado goodies. Of course, this wonderful range of fats in avocado that is kind of unparalleled, but a very good source of glutathione. Of course, it was demonized, the fat in avocado at one point. And then we realized, oh my goodness, it's one of the best fats you can possibly eat. And it's something you never get sick of. I mean, I eat avocado every day, and I've never yet got sick of it. Now, whey protein concentrate we're talking about. So we'll just undo this and we'll put a tablespoon of that. Is that how much we've got for this? A heaped tablespoon of whey protein. We'll put that into the mix. Quite a heaped tablespoon. We're going to put our bruised garlic. So let's open our garlic, our Australian garlic, our wonderful Australian garlic, and let's get ourselves a couple of cloves. And of course, we've got to quickly peel them and bruise them. Now, how am I going to bruise them? I'm going to bang them with this honey jar. That's done the job. That's 1 bruised clove. I'll just get a second one. Big cloves, these. Lovely Australian garlic. I'm hoping I produce something similar this year myself. Fun crop to grow. I love it. Give it a bruise. And that's good. Bruised garlic, leave it sitting there for a few seconds. It's going to get well and truly oxidized in a moment. Now, where are we at? We're talking about whey protein. Our Curcu-Life, of course. How much Curcu-Life is it? A heaped teaspoon. So here's our Curcu-Life. It's a combination of turmeric and pepper. And we're going to put a decent heaped teaspoon in there. Then we've got milk thistle, which we don't have, but we do have our little bit of capsicum for the capsicum, this jalapeno, and we'll hope that it's not going to be too hot, but so I won't put too much in there in case it really burns us up. That might do us. This is a touch of capsicum, as we mentioned, the substance that activates glutathione. The broccoli sprouts we don't have, and we don't have the milk thistle tablets or milk thistle powder. So you can imagine that you put those in there. And then we're going to add our bit of water. a glass of water. Hopefully that's enough. It might not be. And we'll get this show on the road and we'll make ourselves a smoothie. Now, let's see if we can get this going. What we'll do is we'll just add ourselves a little more water, thank you. Add a little more water because she's a bit too thick. That's better. Now, of course, the idea of making a green smoothie is you need to have one of these high-powered. This one's many years old. It's made many smoothies in its life. This is Vitamix from the US. There's Thermoblend from Germany. But you need these 2-horsepower blenders to do it as quickly as you can because you don't want it to go on forever and you want it to be genuinely micronized. So let's just finish it off. Okay. Okay, so let's have ourselves our really thick. We could have made it a little thinner than this, but let's see what it tastes like. You'd make it a little more runny. We put another half glass of water in there, but let's taste. Yeah, I reckon we should have put a bit of, it's actually pretty nice. Yeah, I'd have a taste. Yeah. We could have put a bit of fruit in there if we wanted to sweeten it up a little more, but that's pretty palatable. You can almost taste it, feel it going to work on the liver. Thank you. So that's how you make a Liver Love Smoothie. And we'll move on and talk about a few other things relative to how you can live a longer, just clean my mouth off, longer, happier, healthy life. We're going to talk about a gut health, understand how important your gut health is. We've talked about the need for probiotics, but we're going to talk about something called Butarate at this point. And why is it important? It's really important because bowel cancer is the 4th major cause of premature death. And fiber is hugely important, as you all know. Let's talk about the dynamics of how this thing works. So we have this thin layer of epithelial cells that are interconnected. These cells are connected by structures that are called tight junctures, and that keeps the gut contents, whatever you've eaten, from moving through into your blood system. It holds everything in there, basically. So these epithelial cells exude this mucus material. It's called the mucus layer, and that's really protective. It protects against microbial pathogens, against enzymes, acids, and food-associated toxins. Now, when we move down to the colon, which is part of what we're going to talk about here, they're called colonocytes, these same epithelial cells. And they have to be energized because they've got this really important protective function. And what they use to derive their energies, in the top half of your gut, it's glucose that gives the cells the energies, the epithelial cells their energy to do this really important protective role. But in the bottom half, it's these things called short-chain fatty acids. And they come from certain types of fiber in the colon. And that's really important because the colon's replacing itself every 4 days, the cells are. And the most important by far of those short-chain fatty acids is called butyric acid or butyrate. Now let's look at the roles of butyric acid or butyrate. Butyrate is anti-inflammatory. So this is huge for people with bowel issues, things like irritable bowel or that very painful condition called colitis. Massively important, IBS and colitis, that you're producing good amounts of this anti-inflammatory called butyric acid. It increases mucosal secretion when that reduces the pathogenic bacteria that can grow, and it also produces some antimicrobial peptides, so it's quite protective in that context. It's an immune enhancer, butyric acid. It activates anti-inflammatory immune cells in the colons, again, really important for things like irritable bowel syndrome. It sponsors glutathione production. We've just talked about how important that was. High levels of butyrate produce high levels of glutathione, which gives you even more protection from some of those inflammatory bowel diseases and bowel cancer. It combats type 2 diabetes. Several papers have demonstrated that butyrate or butyric acid increases the production of hormones that improve blood sugar balance. So, 1 in 3 of us have got poor blood sugar balance, which makes us pre-diabetic. And the experts are telling us that diabetes is the coming plague. So that sounds like a good thing to look at. But what's fascinating is its role in terms of cancer. It can specifically target cancerous cells in the colon and reduce their energy and eventually initiate what's called apoptosis, which is cell death. So there's a very famous paper by Anna Han and some of her colleagues in the cancer journal called OncoTarget. And she demonstrated that butyrate, this is quite unique because it's not a common thing in nature, but butyrate can seek out the cancer cells and then it shuts down their capacity to utilize butyrate as an energy source. So it shuts down the capacity of this thing to take itself in, which is kind of like not a very common thing. And that then reduces their energy and eventually leads to their demise. So it's unique where a substance actually shuts down the capacity for its own utilization, but that makes it quite a special substance. So how can we spike the production of butyric acid, this very, very protective thing in our bowel? One of the most powerful is to bring some resistant starch into our diets. Basically, resistant starch also has a major impact on insulin sensitivity. And a study published in the Journal of Nutrition by Kevin K. Mackey showed a 33 to 50% improvement in insulin sensitivity in just 4 weeks by eating 15 to 30 grams of resistant starch a day. And I'll explain what that is shortly, and you'll understand that it's not a hard thing to do. It's actually thought to be, resistant starch, a major tool to avoid chronic disease and improve life quality. So what's ideal? 25 to 30 grams a day. What do Australians eat? 6 grams a day. What do Americans and Europeans eat? 5 grams a day of resistant starch. What do the Chinese have? 15 grams. Still not where you need to be, the 25, but 15 grams, and they've got much less obesity. You've all seen it. And they have far fewer digestive issues. So a fairly good argument for bringing in some resistant starch. So how do you do it? It's called the cook and cool concept. If you cook potatoes and then you store them in the fridge for a minimum of 12 hours, that high starch, and potatoes aren't actually particularly good because they spike sugar more than table sugar. You know, the GI of potatoes is 95, pure white table sugar is 70. So potatoes are not good from that perspective. Sweet potatoes, no problem. They've got the fiber component. They break down much more slowly, and they've got a GI of just 35. So but sweet potatoes, you can eat what you like, but potatoes do spike blood sugar, spike insulin production, speed cell division, and shorten your life, basically. So is there a better way to eat them? Yeah, there is. You have potato salads. Now, you say, oh, yeah, I can cool it down, then I can slice it up and have it for chips. No. As soon as you've warmed it up again, you've changed the resistant starch back to that super blood sugar spiking form of refined carbohydrates or carbohydrates that spike blood sugar very quickly. So potato salad, you leave it cold. Preferably don't fill it with mayonnaise. A good dressing. Pumpkin seed oil, if you've ever had it, it is incredible. And of course, it's jam-packed with zinc. Balsamic vinegar and a lot of black pepper, and put that on your potato salad. It's beautiful. Now, that cook and cool concept can extend to things like rice and pasta. That's rice salads, part of the Mediterranean diet, which is noted for its longevity. And of course, the Japanese got it right with the wonderful thing called sushi, because not only is it based upon white rice, but it's wrapped in that beautiful, all 74 minerals, including very high levels of iodine, that kelp jacket that's wrapped around the sushi. And then they put wonderful things like avocado and high omega-3 salmon. And really, it becomes a very, very healthy diet that could be part of your 25 grams of resistant starch on a daily basis. So let's just talk back on that layer, because the epithelial layer, and we talked about those strong junctures, which are the barriers between the epithelial cells. And without butyrate, without butyric acid, they can become weakened. But there are some other players that perhaps we should think about and try and avoid. Antibiotics kill the organisms that produce butyrate, so that can be really counterproductive for gut health and make you more likely to suffer from this leaky gut, where things from your gut go into your blood system, and there are a whole bunch of side effects that come with that. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen are a major place because they shut down the protein messages that govern the interchange of gut cells, because every 4 days you're supposed to have new ones, and there's a message that's shut down by ibuprofen, so you don't replace them, and so they get tired and weak. The old cells become weak, and that weakens the junctures to create intestinal permeability, which is also called leaky gut. So what are the symptoms of leaky gut? Tick the boxes. Tiredness after eating. This is why people hate the after-dinner presentation when you're giving seminars, because that's the point where because there's a lot of energy anyway involved in digesting, but if you've got leaky gut, you get really tired, and you see the people droop off. I try and keep things entertaining enough so that doesn't happen. And thankfully, it's quite rare, but it does happen occasionally. You're going to have things like sore joints. You're going to have things like eczema, skin conditions. You're going to have poor immunity, headaches, brain fog, memory loss, anxiety and depression, ADHD, multiple autoimmune diseases, all can be linked to this condition called leaky gut. So that's just a little thing, and we want to keep our butyric acid up. So the resistant starch is really important in that context. And finally, we're going to talk about something called lectins. Now, you may have heard of them. There's a guy called Dr. Stephen Gundry, who's everywhere at the moment, who's sort of an expert talking about how lectins can be linked to leaky gut, to heart disease, to autoimmune diseases, and the very important neurodegeneration. He's seen a 90% of his autoimmune patients improve just by removing these things called lectins from their diet. So what contains high lectins? Well, the nightshade family, so that's potatoes, capsicums, eggplants, and of course the big one, which is tomatoes. Beans, pulses, whole grains, and so forth are all part of the lectin story. So just continuing the lectin story, so you might have all heard about the Mediterranean diet and its link to enhanced longevity. But you might have wondered perhaps, why do they go to such great lengths to remove the tomato skins, to remove the seeds when they make their tomato sauces and so forth? And that's where the lectins are. The lectins are in the skin, they're in the seeds at high quiet rate. So what the Italian dishes do is that they utilize tomatoes as lycopene and some other wonderful benefits, including high vitamin C, but they remove the negatives, the seeds and the skin. So basically, in beans, they soak them for 24 hours on the Mediterranean diet to remove the lectins. And they change the water every 4 hours when you're soaking them. So it's a few changes over 24 hours, 6 or 7 changes, because you can't do it when you're sleeping. Now, part of the sourdough story is that the sourdough process removes the lectins. So basically, when we're talking chili peppers, capsicums, eggplants, at least remove their seeds and ideally remove their skin. And one other really cool tool to reduce lectin content of any food is to use a pressure cooker. It's become, a real tool in trade, and it's fairly popular amongst the Stephen Gundry and his strategies to reduce your lectin content and reduce your inflammation. And I think it's worth many people visiting that idea. I was in Rockhampton with a couple on a farm where they grow lychees and a few other things. And the farmer himself was telling me that he was so crippled that he couldn't even pull things out of the fridge without dropping things with just this arthritic kind of condition. And someone suggested, why don't you just try cutting out the nightshades, cut out the tomatoes. He was a very big tomato eater. And it took about 5 to 6 weeks and his pain disappeared. So it's probably something worth trying if you've got inflammatory conditions, because tomatoes, that nightshade family, can, on some people, have quite a strong effect, and it may well be linked, and probably is linked, to that lectin component. So I hope there's something of value for you there. Thanks for watching.